afternoon. Welcome to another one of these Friday afternoon lunchtime LinkedIn Live broadcasts, where we're under the banner of practical leadership from LMI-UK. We're looking to host some interesting conversations about leadership, and particularly where does leadership practically affect what we do day to day? What are some of the issues that have to be faced? And no issue is more in the news, more current, more relevant than the whole thing around net zero, the environment, what's happening. Just in the last day or so, we've started to hear things like not global warming, but global boiling and that sort of thing. So I'm delighted you can see on the screen with us this afternoon, Michael Stock, who is hugely invested in this issue and has a lot of wisdom, has thought about it a lot. And so, Michael, welcome. Really pleased to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Nick. Could I just say a few words about my own journey? I mean, I've done a lot of jobs, law, BBC. I was a leadership coach. I went back to university in 2015, having been to an event about the perfect storm, which people were sort of thinking was going to happen about 2020, 30. And so I decided I really had to get to grips with the science and the systems. And so I went to Imperial College in 2015 and really have been working and learning pretty much full time since then. And it has been a journey, because when I got involved in 2015, the big prize was the Paris COP21, which you may remember under the leadership of Christiana Figueres. The world agreed they had to do everything that they could to keep the temperature rises to well below 2 degrees. And then it became obvious that it was going to be a bit tougher than we had thought, for loads of reasons, which we know. And so since then, really, I've focused on helping businesses cut their use of energy. I've helped leaders try to be able to have the courage to do what has to be done. And just during lockdown, this was an extraordinary sort of time where you could get involved with loads of good things. And so the three things which I was very pleased to be able to learn about was the opportunity for technologies like sort of blockchain and AI to make a difference, particularly for things like MRV, how you measure, report, and sort of verify. But most usefully, I got very involved with the International Climate Coaching Alliance, which took my own sort of coaching a lot further. And so that's me. If you ask me, as it were, where are we now? Where am I in the journey? I'm like a lot of leaders. I'm asking, what's mine to do? What can I do, with the knowledge and the networks that I have? And that's really the sort of focus of my work for this year. Very nice to be here.
Yes, fantastic. And Michael, thank you. And you've shared so many valuable resources with me over the last few weeks, and we'll put a lot of that reading, or put all of it, onto the event chat, so that can be accessed either sort of or after this event, because so much of it is really useful and interesting, and picking up on all of those ideas. And this, that I like the way you frame it. What am I to do as a leader? And that's really what we want to tackle over the next 25 minutes or so. Is what is it? So let me kind of start with asking, what do you think leaders need to know right now? Because people watching this will be leading in all sorts of different contexts. Some will be industries that are very closely connected to environmental issues. Some might feel that they're less, that's less their world immediately, but clearly this is a huge issue, and the science is speaking very clearly to us. So what do you think is important for leaders to know right now about the whole sort of net zero, race to net zero situation?
Well, I think it might start with footprint. I think any leader does have to have some way of understanding their own footprint. You can't fly around the world leaving the gas on and boiling things and be an authentic leader in the race to net zero. So the first thing that any leader has to do to be credible is to have some understanding of their footprint and that of their family and of their business. You can't avoid it. You just cannot avoid it. So if you think the answer is to go electric, it's probably not the best idea to buy a 3-ton SUV, because it doesn't do much for your footprint. It's too much. So that's the first thing. I think the next thing is you have to understand that running a business has just got a whole lot harder for loads of reasons. Firstly, there's a whole lot of law you have to understand, regulations. And whether the UK is in or next door to the EU, the laws which the EU have passed and will pass matter to you and your business in the UK, even if you are a relatively small enterprise, because you will be part of the value chain of a bigger business. And the bigger business is going to have regard to the corporate social responsibility directive, which the EU passed at the beginning of this year. And you've got to know what's coming, and that's coming. And I think the last thing you have to know is what kind of business are you in? What's the problem that your business is helping to solve, rather than just piling up a lot of other sorts of problems? So it's a big task, and I don't think that the challenge has ever been greater for leaders. It is much harder now, because not only do you have those things about the license to operate, you also have to take part in the war for talent. Young people, from all the evidence, do not want to work for bad businesses, and customers do not want to spend their money with bad businesses. You will have seen, I expect, from the report from the UK Committee on Climate Change, 82% of the public, up from about half that, want the government to take action. So the momentum is towards net zero, and it is absolutely not easy. But you're not alone. You know the old idea, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And the great thing is there are plenty of organizations who are able to help. If I just give one example, I had sent you the talk from the Vice Chancellor of Exeter University, Professor Martin Seekert, who in a LinkedIn post about a month ago, he said, we've got plenty of great people wanting to help you with your business and your journey. So you're not alone. Yeah. And as well as the universities, you've got organizations like Carbon Tracker, and you have some great thinkers like John Elkington, who wrote a wonderful book a few years ago called The Green Swan, which is all about those businesses who are making a move to being so positive rather than being bad for everybody.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I really like the tone of the post you shared with me from Martin at Exeter University, which isn't you must do this. Why are you not doing this? Why is this not happening for you? But we're here. There's resource. There are experts. There are universities putting a lot of effort and other organizations to really make this work. And this thing, I think that's a really important message for leaders listening here today is that there's help available. And to tap into that, which is super important. Yeah, and just pick up on the issue raised around the war for talent, which we all know, and certainly almost every organisation we work with at a leadership level is expressing that it's really hard to get great people and to keep them. And so when you do, that's really important. And the all of the thing around purpose being a much bigger purpose and values and ethics being a much bigger factor in terms of who people choose to go and work for than it was. So it's not just about it's the right thing to do, or it's the right thing to do at every level. I think is perhaps an important one.
Excuse me, you can hear a phone. Let me turn it off.
Yes, no problem.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yes, these are the
my mistake for not having put it on to mute.
Yes. Not a problem. Yes, I think those really good. You mentioned laws. Can you say a little bit more about that in terms of what should people be aware of on that side of things? Where do they find out which things are particularly
well,
pertinent?
I think this is something which requires a bit of reading. I have given you a link on what the EU corporate social responsibility rules on ESG reporting mean. And that's a job for the board or just the chief executive really to understand. So I will put that in to a link along with a great video from the Carbon Tracker, which explains something really big and new, which is what has changed this year is that businesses no longer only have to report on their direct emissions, meaning the energy and the waste they make in their services or their manufacture. They also have to report on their supply chain and the use of the things that they make. This is games are changing. So if you are an SME with 200 people thinking you're under that, well, you might be, but you might not, because if you are going to want to sell to bigger companies, you need to be part of the auditing and the reporting. This doesn't sound like an awful lot of fun, I have to say, but you know the old thing: what gets measured gets managed, and it's a bit like getting fit. I mean, I really like the LMI idea of the total leader. You can't be a good leader if you're not fit. It's just not possible. It's too hard. It's too tough. It's too stressful. So you've got to be fit. And so this is not a sort of sprint. It's a marathon. And so the answer to what are the laws is you're going to have to just engage with what the rules say, see what's coming, and see what your peers are doing. But I will put a couple of links in to the chat.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and we'll post all of those after this event, and some really valuable things. Michael, I spent probably 2 or 3 hours yesterday just going through again. I've looked at some of them already, some of those links, and it really does leave you with this sense of this is such a crucial and urgent issue that is going to affect every single individual. But as soon as you start to gather together in communities of when businesses are essentially communities interacting with other communities, this becomes such a huge issue, which sort of raises the question for leaders and that sense that people really care about who they do business with, and who they work for, and it's a legal issue as well, and all of that coming down the track. The question, which I know you've shared as something of a passion, is why should anybody be led by me? As a leader, asking that question. Could you say a little bit more about how that relates to net zero?
Yes. It's got a couple of things I think that I'd like to mention. Firstly is we live in such volatile times. It's very difficult to plan because you don't know what the world is going to be like next year. And so it's a bit like that wonderful sort of painting you may have, or woodcut you may know, of the Great Wave in just Japan, and it shows 2 little boats with a huge wave. And leadership is a bit like that. You're trying to keep the ship or the boat afloat and keep everybody sort of safe. So why should anybody be led by you means you have to keep people safe. The very minimum you have to do is keep your workforce and your customers safe. That's the minimum. But the other thing is we are all really so good being able to tell if people are fake. And so one of the takeaways I think I would want to emphasize is a wonderful article written for the HBR Harvard Business Review maybe 15 to 20 years ago by Rob Goffey and just Gareth Jones. And that was the title of their article, Why Should Anybody Be Led by You? And it came down to a lot of very simple things. The main one, people wanted their leaders to be authentic. So if they were going to take the bus, they just didn't want the leader taking the plane.
Right.
It's simple stuff, and that is why I think the leadership question is so big, because it's a journey for all of us. It's a journey for me and you and everybody who just watches this. And if I can give some model, which I found incredibly useful when I was learning from the Climate Coaching Alliance from Professor Peter Hawkins. He made a simple graphic, which was a circle, and it was about how everybody is on a journey, which begins with curiosity and leads to information and then to awareness. Awareness is big because it's like, what do I now think and do? And then it's to engagement, reaching out to other people, and then to take action. And what I have found is that leaders find it very easy to get to the engagement. They find it really easy to go, for example, to the Bristol Mingle, where lots of business leaders will mingle over a glass and say, well, what are you doing and what's working? The engagement is pretty easy, particularly if you've got children who are saying, as they often do, what are you doing about the planet? The difficult thing is action. And the reason why that is so very difficult is you cannot be sure, unless you put the effort in, to knowing what is a good bet. Some things look good, but might not work. Just some things might look good, but do more harm than help. And so action is challenging. If I take the EV example, it looks like EV vehicles are a great idea, but we keep hearing these stories of electric bicycles blowing up and causing fires. Looks good, but it requires more than just buy and forget. So I think that's the part of the answer to why should anybody be led by you. As a leader, there's no avoiding it. You have to be able to deal with the data, check if the data is true, and keep on understanding and doing the journey.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, isn't it? And it's not. And so this is my experience. And take the EV vehicle one. It's a world I've been interested in and part of for a long time. And there's always those stories of, well, what about this and what about that? And it's never just a simple yes or no, one way or the other. It's going to be messy. Learning, going in a different direction, solving some of these problems is not going to be linear, is it? And that sort of thing. So I guess that's one of the really practical challenges that leaders are facing is the current economic challenge, the current social challenge, all of those things, and then this sort of climate situation, which is clear. And the fact that we're having this conversation now compared to even a month ago when we set it up, so much has happened just in the last few weeks that means this is probably a little bit more front and center for more people than even those that were already concerned. It's been really shoved to the front. But the challenge of these are my day-to-day challenges and realities, costs, my staff, my customers are probably thinking more about paying the mortgage or whatever else, the gas bill, than necessarily the planet. And we've got to make some kind of decisions around the current realities and the bigger picture. Have you got some thoughts on that? And how do leaders do that, but also how do leaders communicate on those things? Because it's important that you take, and as the core thing we'd always teach about leadership is it's not just a top-down directive, it's about keeping people with you and engaging them.
Communication, I think, is almost number one, because if you're on a board, you have the problem of the middle of the organization who might not agree or understand. So it is the top job to be able to communicate. Nothing else happens if you can't explain and people trust you. So it has to be done really well. I think what we are learning is that asking people to take pain now for something maybe in the future doesn't really work. It would be nice if it did. I mean, you will know, for example, the stories of the people who live in northern India who are so famous because they weave the roots of the trees over the ravine so future generations can walk across a living bridge. But that is not the modern way. People want a return on their investment, not next generation, but now. So that's reality. However, lots of good news, because in order to get to net zero, you have to take your foot off the gas. That saves you money. And so the huge prize for moving to net zero, whether it's with EV vans, you may well know that we're doing pretty well on EV cars, but not very well on EV vans. So if you move to EV vans, you'll save money. Everybody likes you. So that's an easy thing. In terms of reducing waste, anything you can do in your supply chain to make sure you don't waste anything saves you money. So that's a no sort of brainer. Where it gets tricky, I think, is on charging. Because if you take a leading firm, Patagonia, they make outdoor gear. And Patagonia are absolutely famous and loved for their advertising, which sometimes has said, don't buy our jacket. Don't buy our jacket. Because they are trying to say, don't keep buying stuff which goes in to landfill. And so the question for business, I think, is about price. And so if there's a way in which the business somehow can tread more sort of lightly, saving money, energy, materials, and at the same time get a better return from their sales, that's where the business would want to be. So it's about providing some quality. If you take food, for example, very challenging to be able to get the right sort of quality of food that people need. But there will be help available in terms of these sort of technologies which can be used. The last thing I think is short-termism is the killer. And so if you're running a business and you think, let me just get to the annual report, if you greenwash, your investors are going to find you out. So you've got to tell the truth. And so I think short-termism isn't going to work in the long term if you are dependent on investors, because they will be able to suss out what's really going on.
Yes, interesting. And yeah, there's a huge desire for authenticity in this, isn't there? And yeah, on any subject, people will suss out and smell out inauthenticity, and the greenwashing side of things is not great. So probably, and speak for myself here a little bit as well, as saying we're trying to understand. Leaders need to be clear about that. We're trying to understand. We're trying to learn. We've got ways to go. We've got things that we need to push into, which I guess is partly the tone. And we've got sort of 6 or 7 minutes left here. Really interested in the tone of the message, going from one of we're all doomed, this is terrible, and there's some pretty serious messages. I'm convinced enough myself. This is a hugely serious subject, and there is a little bit of doom or potential kind of catastrophe going on. But it's why I liked the Exeter University thing of there's positive things happening. I know you're interested as well in the Earthshot Awards and those sorts of things. So perhaps we can kind of take a really positive tone around here's what's happening, here's what can be done. Certainly for leaders, we know, and certainly we would teach this, is if you can frame your message positively with a sense of kind of vision, here's what we're trying to achieve, not just here's something painful we're trying to avoid, but here's a world we're trying to create. Exciting and worthwhile, then that engages people and ultimately is more effective. So tell us some of the good stuff.
Yes, well, the good stuff, I mean, there's loads of it. Okay, I mean, just 3 things. Professor Jim Ski was appointed the other day to the chairman of the International Panel on Climate Change. He is Professor of Sustainable Energy at Imperial College. And yesterday, or the day before, interviewed, he said, the message is about a just transition. In other words, it's not leaving half the people to their fate. It's about having a transition, which is good for as many of the world as can be done. So that's the first big message. Just the next one is, you mentioned the Earthshot Prize. It is fantastic because they have loads of good ideas from innovators. So if you're in business, you have got your pick of great innovations. But the example I want to lead on, or to end on rather, is from the Bezos Earth Fund. And you've got the link. And I wonder if we could just watch that speech now.
Sure.
On
yes.
Greening Africa.
Yes, this is one that's on LinkedIn. So I'll just put this up and hopefully this shares okay. Hold on a second. Right. There we go.
In my life, I was made acutely aware of just how precious green vegetation truly is. Nature is the source of everything good, my mother would tell me all the time. You see, this vision we have to regreen the African continent, it's not only possible, it is vital. It is our life support system. Now, many of us here despair that we are the generation that is destroying the planet, but we don't have to be. We can be the restoration generation.
Great. Like that a lot.
Why do you like it? I mean, I obviously think it's fab. Why do you like it?
Yeah, I think it speaks of we can be involved. We can practically do things. It's not so far away, and sometimes the challenge, I guess, it's always, I'm thinking back to, I forget the specific campaign that was think global, act local. And it connects a bit of that. There's something practical and within reach I can do. Again, we talk a lot about setting smart goals, and they've got to be, on anything, realistic, achievable. They've got to have a sense of kind of inspiration about them as well. And I think that captures a little bit of that. It feels like something really worthwhile and accessible.
Thank you. I would only want to add one thing about the message here. It is that as well as energy and climate and just heating, nature is front and center, not only in Africa, but in the UK, everywhere. And so anything that business can do, anything which we can do to restore nature in any way that works is a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great ending message, really. And I think so we kind of wrap this up, we could easily, and people do meet and talk for days and weeks on this subject. It's huge. I think the concept or the line that we put on these sessions is practical leadership, and for leaders wherever they are have to wrestle with these issues. And I think, again, one of the things that we come up against so often is just people are so busy in the day-to-day operational side of what's going on. But actually, this is huge. And part of the challenge is to create the space for strategic thinking, for considering the wider world, doing your SWOT analysis around kind of what's happening, your opportunities and your threats, and all of those sorts of things. And this is one of them. So we think really important that leaders and even if just you think of yourself as a leader of your own life and what you do, the choices that you make day to day, I think that's just as important, whilst also deciding who we spend our money with, what we demand of government and big corporations and those sorts of things. Yeah, so such an important subject. Michael, a closing word.
hang out with the good people doing really great things.
Excellent. Yes. Great ending. We will share a load of the links and things that Michael has shared, sort of about 8 or 10 or so that are really worth looking at. Lots of other things as well. David Attenborough's recent book is excellent and really kind of worth getting into if you've not come across that one yet. We'll do another one of these soon. Thank you very much, Michael. Really appreciate you investing your time in this. Thank you. Really valuable. And we'll see you all again at another one of these very soon.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye.